All right, good morning. So we are at Ois Tes. That is page 43 on the bottom left. So what do we have so far? We established four components to the halacha to see oneself as if one left Egypt as it's laid out in the Rambam and the Alter Rebbe. Point one is the fact that the exodus from Egypt is an ongoing event in every generation. That's number one. That's the fact. Number two, there's the obligation to therefore feel as if it's happening to you. First of all, the fact that it's happening to you. B, feel that it's happening to you. Three, to demonstrate that. Four, the demonstration is to be done on throughout everything that's done that night.
Let's see the exodus of Gaza.
So now we come like this. The verses that are quoted tell us the verses and us you took out of there because of this that had happened to me, that you took me out of Egypt. Tell me point one, the fact that it exists. The verse which says, remember you were a slave, is already telling you to feel a certain way. That's point two. And then there's the fact that everything about tonight is all about an other. Tell the other the story. Even if it's you alone, treat yourself like an other and tell yourself the story in response to your question as if you were another. And therefore, this feeling that the pasuk says, remember you were a slave, must be demonstrated as well. That's what we have. Those are the stages. The fact that it happened, the fact that it exists, you took us out of Egypt, us you took out of there, it happened to me. Those two verses, that tells the fact that it exists as a continuous event. The fact that the pasuk says, remember you were a slave, tells you should feel that way. And the fact that everything about that night is supposed to be demonstrated to an other teaches us that this too, that I feel that I left Egypt, is to be demonstrated to an other. In everything of that night, which is point 3 and 4. Okay. Here, Mayor, page 43 on the bottom left.
Reminds me of Yom Kippur when I have to get down on my knees and I get whipped in the back.
Okay. Now, based on all the above, Yuva will understand the precise golden language of the Alter Rebbe. The Masha Kosev, and that which he writes, in proving that in every generation a person is supposed to see oneself / demonstrate oneself as if they left Egypt. The verse he quotes is the same verse as our Mishnah, but he quoted it different than our Mishnah. The verse the Mishnah quoted said, and you shall tell your child on that day, because of this that God did to me, they took me out of Egypt. The Alter Rebbe only quotes this part. Because of this that God did to me, he took me out of Egypt. And the Rebbe asks, either one or the other. Either quote the whole verse, which says, tell your son, because of this that it happened to me, which actually demonstrates that it should be demonstrated because you're supposed to tell your son. That part of the verse, tell your son, Alter believes out.
Because it could be for the case where the person's alone. No?
Well, it doesn't matter. You still treat yourself like an other, even if you're alone. Yeah. Right? But that first part of the verse teaches you to demonstrate. Right?
Yeah, right.
Conversely, if all the Alter Rebbe wants to do is quote the relevant section of the verse which tells you that it happened to me, then why have the words because of this? Why quote those words, Ba'avoy Zeh, because of this? Just say, as the verse reads, this that God, God did to me, he took me out of Egypt. Not because of this that God took. Either quote the whole verse as the Mishnah does, beginning with, and you shall tell your child, or only quote the end where it says, it happened to me.
Is this the case?
Why add the word because of this?
Just to explain why, maybe to express the fact that the Rambam left out the word Mitzrayim.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so
maybe saying that to say that because of this, meaning
okay,
the exodus from Egypt.
Similar. Let's see. Close, very close. Okay, top page 44. Even though seemingly, as we explained before, im haraya ki ala metzius. If, as we said before, the Alter Rebbe is quoting this verse which says, because of this that happened to me, just to demonstrate the fact which is point one of the 4 points. The fact that the Exodus is an ongoing activity, ongoing event every generation. If that's what the Alter Rebbe wants to prove, all he should have quoted is Rak, just the end of the verse. God did to me when he took me out of Egypt. That's all. That demonstrates that it happened to me. Why add the preamble which says because of this? Why is it because of this relevant? On the one hand. On the other hand, if the reason why he's quoting this verse is for point number 3, which is to demonstrate to others, then he should have quoted the opening part of the verse, which says, and tell your child. Because tell your child tells you there's got to be an other. Whether it's to his wife, if his son's not there, or to himself if no one else is there. But that part of the verse tells you an other. So the one way or the other. If the Alter is trying to prove from this verse that you have to demonstrate that you feel free, then quote the first half of the verse, which says, tell your son, because there's an element of demonstration there. And if the Alter is only trying to prove the fact that it is that the Exodus is a continuous event, irrespective of the obligations that come as a result, then just quote the part of the verse which says that it happened to me. Why add the words because of this? Right. So either you're demonstrating part 1, which is that it's a fact, that it's a continuous event, and if that's all you're trying to quote, then just quote the part of the verse which says that it happened to me. And if you're trying to prove that there's an obligation to demonstrate to another, then quote the part of the verse which says, talk to your child, because that actually demonstrates it's supposed to be demonstrated. We clear on this?
So he's leaving out the part that regarding demonstration. Then.
That's correct. But he does include the words because of this. Listen to the words of the verse carefully. I'm going to try to translate it as literally as possible. And you should tell your child on that day, because of this, that God took me out of Egypt. Or let me rephrase that, I missed a few words. Because it says like this, and you should tell your child on that day, saying, because of this, that God did to me, they took me out of Egypt.
He starts with because of this.
He starts his quote, the words because of this. Instead of just saying, what he could have said is like this. He could have said, every generation of person is supposed to see himself as if left Egypt because, as the verse says, it happened to me that God took me out of Egypt. That would have been enough. Why add the preamble of, because of this, that God took me out of Egypt? The word because of this, bavor zeh, is irrelevant. But if, on the other hand, the Alter Rebbe is quoting this verse because he wants to show that it isn't enough for just to feel that you left Egypt. It isn't enough the fact that you left Egypt. You also have to demonstrate it to another.
He wouldn't have left out.
Then quote the first half of the verse, which says, and tell your child. Because the word tell your child actually means another. So which way is it? If you're trying to show that that you have to demonstrate, quote the whole verse beginning with, and you should tell your son. If you're just trying to say the fact that the Exodus is an ongoing event, then just quote the end of the verse, which says, it happened to me. Why add the words bavor zeh because of this? Why is that relevant? It explains the Rebbe. By adding these 2 words, because of this, the Alter Rebbe highlights a very important element. Namely, etc. This obligation to demonstrate as if I left Egypt. Not just to feel, but to demonstrate. Where is it connected to? When do I have to demonstrate? At which point in the Seder do I have to demonstrate that I feel like I left Egypt? No? When do I have to demonstrate? At which point in the Seder?
The telling of the story.
Only then?
Well,
are you sure? No?
Yeah,
When do you have to demonstrate? Throughout what? No?
The Seder.
The whole Seder.
The whole Seder, yeah.
Which means you have to lean to the left, you have to set your table beautifully, everything. And if the Alter Rebbe were to only quote the verse which says, and you should tell your son on that day, then you would say, oh, you know when you have to demonstrate? Only when you tell the story. But actually, you have to be demonstrating it throughout the entire night, not just when you tell a story, which is why he includes the words bavor zeh because of this. Because what does the word because of this mean? The Mishnah derives from the words because of this that's in front of me, the Pesach, the Matzah, and the Maror, which is the whole night. So by taking out the words, by not quoting the words that you should tell your child, and including the word because of this, he's showing that the demonstration that I feel like I left Egypt is throughout the entire night. Expressed in the words bavor zeh. Expressed in the words because of this. Because the Mishnah learns that the word because of this means at the time when I have matzah mar in front of me, which is the entire night. So let's see how the Rebbe writes it.
It seems
You
to-
see how beautiful that is? Precise, perfect wording.
But it seems
This is so
to-
classic Rebbe. Yeah.
It does seem to prove that you should demonstrate, you should have freedom throughout the whole night.
That's right.
But what about the demonstration?
Okay, we'll get there.
I don't
The demonstration part we already
Because it
learned
seems to be-
because
it
all of
seems
that.
like You're going to a particular, but leaving out the general.
So that's the dance here.
you know?
The fact that it has to be
You have
demonstrated.
demonstrate
You're
of
right.
The whole night.
So this
The
is
whole night is a qualifier of demonstrate. It seems like
Exactly.
You're losing demonstrate.
That's right.
for the
So
whole-
that's exactly right. Which is we're going to get there soon. Yes, but this is the dance.
Okay,
On the one hand, where does the notion of demonstration come from?
tell your child.
Tell your child from a one particular event of that night, but it teaches you something about the entire night. So the Alter Rebbe wants you to know it's not stuck to that particular point in the night when you tell your child a story. That's the only time when demonstration of freedom has to be present. Demonstration has to be the entire night,
For sure.
even though it's derived from that particular point. But we're deriving from that particular point for the totality of the night. That the whole night has to be a demonstration of freedom. I lean to the left. I have my table set beautifully, and so on and so forth. All the halachas to come out of this idea. Following?
Yeah. Still think you need that demonstrate
Okay, we're going to get there.
generality.
Yes, we're going to get there.
Okay.
We're going to get there. But yes, you are right.
There's two facets to that whole thing.
Sorry?
There's two facets to the whole thing.
Yeah.
One is a demonstration that we're suffering, and the other is a demonstration that we're freedom.
Oh, so that's a good point. There are two sides of one coin, which
Yeah.
I think we discussed that one time before, which is why you have to have the maror, but then you also have to have the matzah. You have to remember,
Melini.
that's right, because the demonstration that I left Egypt, which is what we're going to learn soon, the stress on Egypt out there, but this is Egypt, right? The demonstration that I left Egypt comes along with remembering what was in Egypt too. Otherwise, what am I demonstrating? So you have to have, that's correct. So you have to have both elements, correct. Okay, so let's see now again the Rebbe's words. Bottom right paragraph on middle of page 44, the middle paragraph on the right hand column. Through this, that the Alter Rebbe quotes the verse which says because of this, and does not quote the part of the verse which says that you should tell your child. Who madgish, he's stressing the relevance of this obligation to demonstrate your freedom, which came from the verse which says and you should tell your child, etc., that you left Egypt. It's not limited to the moment you're fulfilling the obligation to tell your child. That's the only time you're supposed to demonstrate freedom. Don't limit it there. But rather, it should be demonstrated. The fact that I left Egypt has to be demonstrated throughout the entire night, which is expressed in the words because of this. For the totality of the time. Of which the verse says in the particular to tell your child. But it's about the totality of the time, which is when? At the time that matzah and maror are lying in front of me, which is what the verse, which is what the Gemara derives, the Mishnah derives from the word because of this. Right? The Mishnah said, because of this. If I say the word because of this, because of what? This means I'm looking at a particular thing, which means I have to have matzah and maror in front of me, which is why we pointed to the matzah. We pointed to maror. Because bavor is that because of this. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe quotes the words because of this to tell you that this obligation to demonstrate your freedom is associated with the words because of this, which is of the totality of the whole night. So everything you do that night, all of the things that are included in the bavor zeh, in the because of this, in the elements of the Seder night, which is the entire night, all of that must be imbued with this element of I'm demonstrating I am free. Okay. Now let's continue. Bottom right, Yud. Alpia now, based on the above, is clear? Based on the above, that the obligation to demonstrate that you are free, Hurak Balel Pesach, is only in the Neder Seder. Right? We spoke about this at the beginning, or last week. You're obligated to remember Egypt every day. So what makes the Neder Seder different? What's unique about the mitzvah of telling the story of the Seder night if every day I have to make mention of the story of Egypt? So we explained, one of the differences is, throughout the year, you just got to make mention. Seder night, got to be in conversation to another, even if the other is me. Right? That's the uniqueness. So, based on that, based on the above, Yud, the obligation to demonstrate my freedom to another, who rak below Pesach, is only in the night of the Seder. But the obligation all year long, which comes from the verse which says, and you should remember you left Egypt, which wasn't associated with the night of the Seder, right? That verse said, remember you were a slave and therefore treat your slaves nicely. That's all year round, not just Seder night. Right? But that verse,
First Rambam quote.
Yes, which Alter also quoted. Yes, right. But that tells you have to feel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like
Because
any day of the week. Though.
Any day of the week. But the difference between the Seder night and the rest of the year is, rest of the year you should remember you left Egypt. Seder night, tell it to another. Demonstrate. That's right. So on the rest of the year, it's only to feel as if yourself. Okay, so this distinction, the night of the Seder got to be demonstrated to other. Year round, you feel that way, even if an other is not listening.
Feel it.
Just feel it. Remember it. You don't have to demonstrate. Night of the Seder, you have to demonstrate. This distinction, says Rebbe, Yeturid Zeh Sheba Mishnah. This will explain why in the Mishnah. And likewise, the language of the Haggadah of both the Rambam and the Alter Rebbe, which the Haggadah, as we explained, quotes the Mishnah, right? How is it written? How is it written in the Haggadah / Mishnah? See yourself. Doesn't they demonstrate? Even the Alter Rebbe and Rambam, who rule in their book of law that you have to demonstrate you are free, how do they write it in their Haggadah? You have to see yourself. Why doesn't their Haggadah say also, like the halacha, you should demonstrate? So Kosav, the Rambam and Alter Rebbe write, quoting the Mishnah, Chayav Adam Liros, a person is obligated to see himself. Even though the obligation, as we learned in the book of halacha, extends beyond seeing yourself but to demonstrate. Why? It explains, of a piska zuhi. What's the intention of why this Mishnah is inserted in the Haggadah? In every generation is supposed to. Why? What's the intention of inserting this Mishnah into the Haggadah? Now we have to read in the Seder night, in every generation, each person is supposed to see himself as if he left Egypt. Why we read that part of Haggadah? The Mishnah itself explains. The intention of this paragraph in the Haggadah is the Hagdama. It's an introduction, a prelude in explaining the next paragraph. What's the next paragraph in the Haggadah, which also comes from the Mishnah? It says like this: therefore, we have to thank you and praise you and so on and so forth. And then we go to the Hallel. Right? This is the order of the Haggadah. The Haggadah first begins with the question. Then we have the answer, two versions of the answer, right? Avodah Mayinu and the, right? And then the end of the Haggadah, we wrap up by explaining Pesach Matzah Marar. And then we say, in every generation, this person is supposed to see himself as if he left Egypt. And therefore, it's our obligation to laud, to thank, to praise. And from there, we launch into the Hallel. Right? So what's the intention of this paragraph in the Haggadah? It's not here to tell me my obligations. My obligations are in the Code of Jewish law. Here, it's just to explain what I'm about to do, which is to praise you. Why am I praising you? I'm praising you because it happened to me. Nothing to do with demonstrating. Follow? So kiyim. So the reason why I read in the Haggadah the statement in every generation I'm supposed to see myself as if I left Egypt is not to explain to the listeners what my obligations are. The point here is to explain how amazing the Exodus is. That this Exodus is so amazing that it's an ongoing event in every generation. Without distinction, and in every day of every generation. Even the day of the week, even not Pesach. I'm trying to explain how amazing the Exodus is, which is why I got to praise you. I'm not in my Haggadah trying to explain to everybody what my obligations tonight are. In the Haggadah / Mishnah, I'm here to explain why I'm about to praise you, Hashem. And the reason I'm about to praise you is because the Exodus is such an amazing thing that it keeps on going every generation and every day. And because it's so amazing, therefore I'm always supposed to see myself as if I left Egypt, even not on the Seder night. As if I left Egypt. No. And therefore I have to praise you. So now you can see why in the Mishnah Haggadah it's one way, right? This is one of our big questions. If the Rambam and Alter Rebbe are learning that the obligation is not just to see yourself, but to demonstrate, why doesn't the Mishnah say so? Yeah. Now we have the answer, because the Mishnah is not there to tell you what your obligations tonight are. The Mishnah there is to teach you the order of the recitation of the Haggadah. And what's the recitation of the Haggadah? The recitation of the Haggadah concludes with a halal of thanks of Hashem. When do you thank Hashem? By understanding how amazing the Exodus from Egypt is. It's so amazing that it happens in every generation. Everybody's supposed to feel it all the time. Nothing to do with demonstrating. Demonstrating is a separate halacha. But in terms of thanking you and praising you, Hashem, for the Exodus, I have to describe how amazing the Exodus is. And the amazingness of the Exodus comes from point one, which is that it happens in every generation, not just because I have to demonstrate. That's not what makes the Pesach amazing. That's just an obligation that I have. But what makes the Exodus of Egypt amazing and worthy of praise is the fact that it happens in every generation and every day. And therefore, the Haggadah / Mishnah don't include the part that I have to demonstrate I'm free. It just includes the part that I should feel as if I'm free, because that's the fact that happens every day. Following? Okay. And that continues. The reason why the Haggadah doesn't make mention of the fact that I have an obligation to demonstrate my freedom, it's just like the Haggadah doesn't list all my obligations that night. For example, nowhere in the Haggadah do I read, I am obligated to drink 4 cups tonight. You just drink 4 cups because you're obligated. But the text of the Haggadah doesn't include all your obligations of the night. So why should it include the obligation to demonstrate? It only includes that which is relevant to the recitation of the Haggadah. And the recitation of the Haggadah concludes with a Hallel. And part of the Hallel comes from the fact that every generation it happens. And every generation I feel it. Not because of my obligation to demonstrate. Not batam, but pashas. And the basic more reason is because, hey, I am demonstrating my freedom. I don't have to say, hey, tonight we're obligated to eat matzah. I'm just eating matzah. Hey, tonight I'm obligated to drink 4 cups of wine. I'm just going to drink 4 cups of wine. So tonight I'm obligated to demonstrate. So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm leaning, I'm having my set table beautifully, and so on and so forth. And the same thing is true of the obligation to demonstrate. The same way I don't have to make a declaration about my obligation to drink the 4 cups. I don't got to make a declaration about my obligation to demonstrate my freedom. All I have to do is demonstrate, explain why I'm saying Hallel. That's what I have to explain.
But you can't demonstrate without seeing it.
Someone else has to see it.
You have to see it too.
Right, so I see myself leaning.
Feel it.
Sure, I see myself leaning. I see my table set with the beautiful silver and gold. I see the pillows I set up. I see that we're on the Shabbos clothing. I see all the stuff.
So in other words, you don't
have to describe it.
You don't have to have in the text of the Haggadah that you must demonstrate.
Exactly.
But the fact that you're doing these actions
speak for themselves.
Are the demonstration.
Exactly.
As the halacha will tell you, you must.
Exactly. The halacha will tell you what you got to do tonight. And everything you do tonight will be present at your Seder table because you're doing it. Right? Because you're doing it. It's got to be there. All I need to do in my liturgy is just say my obligations. Say what I'm doing. And the obligation in my liturgy concludes with a praise of a Hallel. And that Hallel is given a whole new oomph when I explain that the Exodus happens every generation and we all feel it every day. So in other words,
this is why the Mishnah is written the way it is.
Exactly. The Mishnah is written because the Mishnah is giving you the text of the Haggadah. Just like I just finished saying Pesach Matzah Maror, which is part of the text of the Haggadah. And then it goes on to say Lefichach, therefore I have to praise you, Lord, which is also part of the Haggadah. And then it concludes with the Bracha Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael, which is also the text of the Haggadah. The whole Mishnah is the text of the Haggadah. And the text of the Haggadah is this: the Exodus is so amazing that not just tonight you have to feel you left Egypt. Every day you got to feel you left Egypt. And that is to demonstrate. That's a halacha, not about my text in the Haggadah. Following? As explains, like you just said, the very fact that I'm saying the Exodus to someone else and that I'm doing all these things, that itself is already the demonstration. The leaning, the telling the story to someone else, the answering the question, the beautiful table set, all that stuff is already the demonstration.
It's already built in.
It's already built in. It's a beautiful thing. You know, the judge is on, he always likes when we add a little chassidus, not just to keep it halachic. The halachic here is so beautiful, or it oozes chassidus already, the halacha here. Right? There's certain things that you got to say. You have to spell it out. What are those things you have to say? Praise. Never skimp on saying praise and explaining why something's so amazing. Your obligations, you have to talk about your obligations. Just do them. Just do them. When it comes to praise of an event, of Hashem, of another Jew, say it. Say the whole praise. Say how amazing something is. My obligations, I don't have to talk about my obligations. Just do them. Just do your obligations. That's enough. You don't got to talk about your obligations. But your praise of an other, of Hashem, of an event, say it. Say it, say it, say it, say it. That's the message from today. God willing. Okay, so God willing, tomorrow we will actually conclude. I'm hoping we'll finish this tomorrow because we already spent we have a lot to go.
So it's not really.
Maybe it'll take us 2 more days, but hopefully we'll I want to finish this because it's beautiful. As you can see, it's a beautiful talk from the Rebbe giving us insight into this whole part of the Haggadah. Yeah.
It's not really the Egyptians who caused the suffering of the Jews. It was Hashem who set it all up.
It's a good question. The Rambam writes about this. It's true that Hashem did want the Jews to end up in Egypt, but at the end of the day, the particular Egyptians who do particular bad things are culpable for what they've done. That's what Rambam explains in the laws of Teshuvah. Okay, you have a wonderful day, and God willing,
All right, thank you.
tomorrow or day after, we'll wrap up this discussion.
Neither the
day.
chicken is born